A couple logistics real quick. So I'm going to talk, and then our student researcher, Zhuohan, is going to talk, and we'll go back and forth. If you folks have questions, you can just raise your hand, and hopefully I'll see you. And then for the people online, a PhD student in our group is going to be moderating the chat, and we'll be looking for questions. And if those questions are simple enough that she can answer them for you, her name is Levy, and she will. And then if they seem sort of like a useful point of discussion, Levy can raise her hand and let me know. So that's how the virtual folks can interact with me and Zhuohan, even though we can't see you. Okay, so we're going to go through some preliminaries here and then slowly, eventually get into this web map explorer that we've been working on that's associated with our research. So firstly, who we are, briefly, 5 minutes, some really, really brief background science, really, really brief summary of some of the data we're talking about. Then Zhuohan is going to take us through kind of the basic functionality of the web app. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. But we don't. Virtual people, I don't know. Ask the virtual people. Can you see the recording? Did the recording warning go off?
Oh.
Oh yeah.
It did.
I don't see the. Okay, we're good.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, so once we get to the Eco-Hydrology and Heat Explorer, that is the web application that we've been working on. Zhuohan's going to introduce us to that. I will then take us through a guided example. Then with the time that we have left, we can do kind of an interactive example or questions or feedback. For the guided example and for the basics, we have actually pre-copied some of our interactions with the app to save us time so that we can go through this. And that will be useful in the sense that we can play with the app live at the end, but we won't do that during our presentation just so that we can get all the how-tos across. So first, who are we? So Nan mentioned that we're part of this SoCal Heat Hub at UCSD. Briefly, what this is it's a large group of people. We have 3 different research teams, and then we have an education team and a community engagement team. And broadly, the overall topic here is about heat and understanding the impacts of heat in the coastal zone in particular, and then ways to sustainably adapt to that heat. We are a large group of researchers. It's a 5-year project, hopefully extends longer than that, and it's funded by the National Science Foundation. I am the PI on the eco-hydrology and sustainable greening research component of this. We have 2 other research components and PIs, postdocs, students on those teams, but I won't have time to talk about those. So I'm just going to talk about our work. And we are tasked with addressing the question of what are locally specific relationships between temperature and vegetation, and can vegetation be used for heat adaptation, and then what are the associated climate and water constraints. Therein, we've had to explore many, many different data sets and explain the meaning and interpretation of those data sets, and that's sort of what brings us here today. For those not familiar, which is most people, this term eco-hydrology, it is not as difficult as it sounds. Eco-hydrology is simply the study of combined hydrological or water and biological or plant processes. Eco-hydrology itself can be broader than that. Biology is a large thing, but here we're just talking about plants. Okay, and our education and community engagement teams, Nan and Cheryl are here. Darby and Abel not here today, but all of us kind of surround the research teams and interact with the research teams to create what we are hoping to be what is called research co-production, in that the conversations that we have with educators and the conversations that we have with community partners inform our research and inform the directions that our research takes. Okay, so this co-production, part of that has been the production of this web tool, because there have been so many sort of questions arising due to the fact that there are data sets that we use that educators and community partners are also interested in, and our research sort of provides information that may be helpful to those educators and community partners in their own work. Okay, so briefly, the science on plants and heat. I'm not going to be able to do this justice, but I will go as quickly as I can while preserving time for the tool. Plants cool the environment, and they do this as a part of a sort of complex process. I will simplify that here and say that a plant on the surface of the earth does two things. It provides shade cooling, and it provides cooling through the evaporation of water. On the left, when we're talking about shade cooling, plants, as we all know, they shade the air, and they shade the air below their canopies. This reduces the energy that's coming down from the sun, hitting soil and land surfaces, heating those land surfaces up, and blocks a certain amount of energy that would otherwise be present to heat the land surface and heat the air. On the other side, we have evapotranspirative cooling. Plants also, as a byproduct of photosynthesis, transpire water. So water vapor comes through their leaves as a product of photosynthesis into the air. It's a water vapor flux. And additionally, water that may be on the surfaces of plants, soils, pavements, any surface also evaporates. That's why it's called evapotranspiration. And what this does, this process of evaporation and transpiration, that uses solar energy. So energy that gets used to evaporate water into the atmosphere is not being used to heat the land surface. It's not being used to heat the air. So there's a little bit of a trade-off here between energy coming in from the sun, energy being blocked and reflected back out, and energy being used to do evaporation and transpiration, and remaining energy being used to heat the air, heat the land surface. All of these are kind of described in more detail in this systems model at the plant scale. This is from a research paper that is not my paper, but it's a relatively complex paper about the modeling of these dynamics. And here I'm just using it to kind of represent some of the features of this that are relevant to the role of plants on the land surface.
Is the modeling that you're describing, are there different plants that are better or worse at evapotranspirative radiative cooling? And do they have like other trade-offs, like some of them I would imagine need more water maybe? So like if you're in a hot area, you don't want a bunch of plants that require like a ton of water to keep them functioning.
Yeah, no, and that's a really good question. And there are studies, different plants do use different amounts of water, different plants do evaporate and transpire different amounts of water. They're more or less water efficient in their process of doing photosynthesis. In this case, we are not directly looking at plant types, but there is a set of research out there that does think about the role of different types of plants in terms of how water stressed they are or are not, given a certain input of water, and how much cooling they may or may not provide. The research on that is a little less well-defined in terms of how much benefit they provide, but there's research sort of around that topic for sure. What these relationships create is a dynamic or a set of relationships that we can actually track with data. And I'll go through describing this somewhat quickly, but if we look at the plot on the left, on the vertical axis, you're seeing land surface temperature. It's the temperature of the ground. And then on the horizontal axis along the bottom, and again, I'm looking on the far left, we are looking at a measure of plant greenness called NDVI. It's a normalized difference vegetation index. So as you move from left to right on the horizontal axis, think about plants getting greener on the landscape. And as you move from the bottom to the top, think about the land surface getting hotter. And all this plot is saying is that when you move from low amounts of green from the left to high amounts of green on the right, parcels of land get cooler. The line is going down. The lines are simply different cities over which these data were summarized. So if you look at the red line, that's San Diego. over land areas in San Diego, land areas that are more green are cooler on average. This is no surprise. We know that areas with trees tend to be cooler. At nighttime, that relationship is a little bit different. So the one I was just talking about on the left is daytime land surface temperature. You know, think of sun in the middle of the day. Nighttime land surface temperature, a bit different. I'm not going to talk about it. All this to say, though, that the relationships can be complex. And lastly, this plot, similar, we've got along the horizontal axis. This is, again, our measure of greenness, less green, more green. And then as you move up vertically on this axis here, this is different. That's a measure of evapotranspiration. So that's a measure of plant water consumption or landscape water consumption. And so as you see, you know, as we move along the same level of low greenness to high greenness, the same one that corresponded to a decrease in temperature, you get an increase in evapotranspiration or water consumption. And that's because plants, when they're on the land, they use water. So the kind of central relationship that we're looking at in our research is this relationship. It's this relationship that we know that the presence of plants and the types of plants and the coverage of plants creates a situation that can reduce temperature. Simultaneously, that temperature, that presence of plants that is decreasing temperatures can increase water demand. And we're interested in kind of those three variables. And those three variables are what feed into this web application that we created because we use data sets like these to capture these relationships. Okay, the data that we're using, here we are focused primarily on satellite data. Data that comes from sensors that are aboard satellites in space circling the Earth. And these are, in particular, there are many, many different Earth observation data types. We are focused on these terrestrial satellite observations. There are ocean satellite observations too, but that's not what we're using here. We're using these terrestrial satellite observations. And these are heavily informed, crafted, calibrated, validated by ground observations. So if we have a satellite observation, say, of land surface temperatures or air temperatures, those are constructed using weather station data. They're kind of calibrated to those ground measurements. So when we think of satellite data, I would encourage you not to think about it as something purely from satellites. It's actually a product that is heavily reliant on the observations that we still make on the ground. The data structure, this is kind of what this satellite data looks like. I'll encourage you to just think of this simplification where we get data from satellites. It's an unprocessed measurement from a sensor. It goes through a model. It's a bunch of math. And then that spits out something that is physically meaningful that we can interpret. In terms of what that is formatted as for the user like me, we refer to an individual grid cell or a pixel over which, say, a value of land surface temperature might be summarized as a pixel or a grid cell. You'll hear both of those. A layer is a surface of many pixels or grid cells, kind of a regularized surface. And then a satellite data set might have just one layer. We might just have one observation of land surface temperature at one time, or we might have many layers. We might have many observations of land surface temperature over space at many different times. What satellites record is a spectral signature, and all that is it's the amount of light or energy that a surface reflects along different wavelengths of light. So the spectral signature is a unique distribution of reflected, emitted, and absorbed radiation of, say, different objects. This reflectance measure, it's just the percent of energy coming down that is reflected or emitted back up by these different objects. And then you measure this reflectance at these different points in the wavelength. So you can measure reflectance that occurs at the wavelength of visible red. You can measure reflectance that occurs at the visible wavelength of green and blue. And I'm not going to have time again to do this justice, but this is kind of what these unprocessed measurements from satellite sensors is. It's reflectance from the Earth's surface along different wavelengths. The math model, for example, the simplest one that we might have here is simply an equation for normalized difference vegetation index. The equation that creates this measure of greenness on the land surface that we call NDVI is simply a normalized difference between reflectance at the near infrared wavelength and visible red, normalized by the sum of those. Again, this sort of takes some time to absorb and understand, but essentially NDVI, the math model here that's producing interpretable information, is a very simple mathematical equation, taking measures of reflectance, scaling them such that we get an index that ranges between -1 and 1. Over land, we only see NDVI values ever that range roughly between 0 and 1. 0, no vegetation, 1, tropical rainforest. The data we're using in the app that we're talking about today essentially all comes from a process like this. The math model and the inputs to a product like land surface temperature are a lot more complex. NDVI is about as simple as it gets. And I won't talk about those, but the data sets that we're using here, that's just an image of the San Diego region. It's just a photograph, red, green, blue, from space of the satellite of the San Diego region. Up here, we're looking at a map of tree canopy cover. It's just the percent of an area that's covered by tree canopy, by leaves. And this is a product that we have just a single layer on average between 2015 and 2021. So again, single layer, it's just an average amount of tree canopy cover over that entire period at a spatial resolution of a 30 meter by 30 meter grid cell or pixel. Similarly, we have categorizations of land use and land cover. I won't say a ton about this other than to say that, for example, these red areas are built up or urban areas. The dark green areas are trees. I think the yellow areas are shrubs, scrublands. You can see water. These are, a classification is kind of a tool we use that takes information like those reflectance signatures that I showed earlier and classifies them into groups according to their similarity. So built up area looks similar to a satellite sensor. Trees look similar to a satellite sensor. We group them. It's called a classification. And this, again, it's a single layer. It's the most frequent realization of a classification over this same 2015 to 2021 period comes from a different satellite that's 10 meters by 10 meters, so smaller. And we use both of these data sets in our research, primarily for the purposes of this application that we're going to talk about, just to identify different areas. And then lastly, these are the data sets of focus here. NDVI, our measure of greenness, we have this on a 16-day resolution when there are not clouds. Land surface temperature in degrees Celsius, and that we have also at a 16-day resolution at a 30 meter by 30 meter pixel grid cell. And this is every 16 days between 2015 and 2021, we have an image of NDVI and of the land surface temperature. And then finally, evapotranspiration. We also have that's monthly in this case. So, we'll get 2 LST observations per month, assuming there are not clouds, but only 1 ET evapotranspiration observation per month. Again, it's 30 by 30 meter pixels. Those 2 happen to be global because they are the satellite. It takes global observations. This one happens to be for the United States because it's a little bit more of a modeled product.
Provided there aren't clouds, what happens if there's clouds? Do you just have gaps in the data?
Yeah, then we have no data.
Really patchy.
And you'll see that, yeah. So, yeah.
Some tracks, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like sea surface temperature. This area, we don't have any data, so it's just black.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that happens. Luckily, I mean, in California, we're relatively lucky. It's not cloudy a lot of the time. I mean, the marine layer is a different story, but anyhow, Zhuohan is going to take us through the basics of the different parts of the application. We're going to go kind of fast, but just bear with us. She's going to point out the different pieces of this, and then we're going to go through some examples afterwards. Go ahead, Lainey. Okay. Oh. They're like how the satellite one is measured. Okay. That's probably a longer conversation, so I'm gonna put it on hold. Thanks. Okay, go ahead, John.
In our main panel, we include table instruction for the app as well as the attachment for clicking to open the detailed instruction doc. And the following, the data details and links to data source information. For example, here on step line with that, we use for a data layer that we display on the map layer. So here, for example, NVIDIA layer is normalized difference between index.
I think hers was off, right? So we're gonna give you ours.
Oh, no, wait. Sorry, what I was trying to say is that's on. That's a live mic, and that's a live mic. They're
But I
both
think
on,
they
can
can't.
be the same.
They can't hear Zhuohan though. For some
Oh, they
reason.
can't?
No,
They cannot.
They cannot? Oh.
did she?
Here, let me see.
That was a good intuition.
Ah.
I couldn't see the line.
Could you talk for a second?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
See him. Chat. Yes. Thumbs up? Yeah, I'm seeing thumbs up, but they can hear you.
Okay. I'll just hold this. So, okay, let me start from the point. So now we're going to introduce the basic components for the eco-hydrology and the heat explorer. Firstly, in the main panel, it will include the simple instruction for the app, as well as an attached link for clicking to open a detailed instruction doc. And the following is the data details and links to data source information. So here are all the satellite data sets we use for creating the data layer that will be displayed on the map area. For example, NDVI layer is normalized difference vegetation index. RST layer is land surface temperature. ET layer is e-wave transpiration. TCC layer is tree canopy cover, and LULC layer is land use and cover classification. And on the scroll down menu in Analyze part, it will provide the interpretations for better understanding how we could illustrate the summary statistics and all the charts, including time series triggers and scatter plot that will be displayed on the main panel and the pop-up panel later. And on the legend panel is for selecting what to display on map area. So here we got year selector that include year ranging from 2015 to 2021. And we got season selector, including season like winter, spring, summer, fall, and full year. And also we got data layer selector, including all the layer that we mentioned before, the NDVI, RST, ET, TCC, and LULC. So we can switch between different options within this selector to choose the data layer we want to display on the map area. And also the legend will indicate the values and corresponding colors for the selected year, season, and data layer. So here we take the left-hand side map as example. We're looking at data layer as NDVI in 2015 winter. So we can tell from color bar that the NDVI is the data range is from 0 to 1, and the color ranges from brown to green. And also on the correspondingly on the map area, we can see some yellow and brown areas, which indicates a low NDVI value and represented as a low vegetation level. We can also see some green areas indicating like high NDVI value, representing a higher vegetation level. Also, we can similarly, the right-hand side map is displaying also the NDVI layer, but we can see we select a different time period here, which is 2021 winter. And in this way, we can compare the different data to display on both sides of the map with the same legend pen option on both sides. Now we are going to talk through other components for the app. Firstly is the text box. For typing to search a specific location we want to look at. And then we can click this button for zooming in and out. And depending on what we want to look at on a broader scale or granular scale. And also we can click the toggle base map button for clicking to switch base map between terrain and satellite. And then we can use the screen slider for dragging to split left and right maps, right-hand side maps, depending our purpose of view. And also we can click anywhere on the map to select the point, which is a point selection function that we'll talk about later. And finally, we can click the draw polygon button on the bottom panel to draw polygon on the map to select an area, which we'll also illustrate it later. So now we are going to talk about the data layer visualization function for the app. And now we are going to use a specific location as an example. So we can just directly type the name of location on text box, and it will be automatically navigated to this area, which is La Mesa. And since we are selecting the NDVI layer in 2015 winter, so from the screenshot, we can say, for example, on the top left, top right side, there are many like yellow and brown area indicating like low vegetation green level, and on the country on the top left side, there are more like green areas indicating like higher green level. And similarly, we can apply the interpretation to other data layer. For example, for the land surface temperature layer, the blue color stands for low temperature and red color stands for high temperature. And for E-wave transpiration layer, the brown and yellow colors stand for low E-wave transpiration, and the blue and green colors stand for higher E-wave transpiration. And for tree canopy layer, the white color stand for low canopy cover, and green color stand for high canopy cover. And for land cover and the classification layer, different colors just corresponds with different types of land classification categories. So one thing we want to mention here is every time you want to switch our data layer, especially there's some temporal variation, we need to reselect year first. For example, we are changing our display year from NDVI to LST. So firstly, we go to the layer selector to select LST layer. Then we go to the year selector to select the select year option so that we can see the map area turns to blank. And then we need to reselect 2015 in the year selector to make sure the LST layer will be displayed correctly. So similarly, we can do this for the right-hand side map so that we can compare the land surface temperature layer across different time periods. So here is 2015 and 2021 winter. Now we are going to talk about the point selection function. So there are two ways for extracting data from map. The first way is that we can just click a point on the map, and it's basically summarizing data for an individual cell or pixel. And how we define the individual cell pixel is that it is the data, satellite data we are using of its resolution here. So for example, we are looking at NVIDIA data. So the spatial resolution for this data is 3 meter plus 3 meter. So 1 pixel here just stands for the area of 3 meter plus 30 meter plus 30 meter. And also once we click the point on the map, it will emerge pop-up panels, including the information about selected data at the clicked point. Also, we can see, since we can select different time period on both sides of the map, so that we can comparing different information in both sides of the pop-up panels here. Yeah, so we're going to talk more detail about summary statistics. So since we select 2 points and 2 different years on both sides of the map, and we're going to use the left-hand side map and pop-up panels as an example. So for the left side point on the pop-up panel, it will first display the coordinates for the points, which is latitude with 32.84 north and longitude with 117.19 west. And at this point, the land cover type is tree, and NDVI is the main value of average by the time period we selected. So here is 2016 full year. So 0.64 is the NDVI value for this point within 2016. And similarly, the LST is land surface temperature is 26.43 Celsius for this point in 2016. and ET evap transpiration is 117.08 millimeter per month for this point in 2016. And finally, the tree canopy cover for this point is 46%. And now we are going to talk about time series charts of values at the points, but we'll save the scatter plot for later. So for NDVIs, so for NDVI time series chart, it's basically collecting all available satellite images for that year. So here is 2018 full year, and then extract NDVI value from all these satellite images and arrange them into time order. So we can see how the time NDVI changed in a temporal variation within 2018, and similarly, we can see how the LST and the ET change across the year. And also we can move our arrow around the time series charts to each point to see like this exact value for example, the LST within a specific day. For example, in 2018, June 21st, the land surface temperature for that day is 44.673 Celsius. And in 2018, November, the evap transpiration for that month is 21 millimeter. And finally, we are going to reset our map if we want to clear all the joints and pop-up panels on the map area. So this option will emerge once we select a location on the map. And now we are coming back to our start point. And the second way to extract data is select a polygon on the map. Since sometimes we have our own region of interest, we can just go into draw polygon selection, click it, and go to the map area to use the arrow to draw a polygon on the map. And eventually it will show a field polygon and as well as the two sides of the pop-up panels. And the logic, a different logic is that we are summarizing data over multiple cells or pixels instead of just an individual, because we have a polygon and covering several cells and pixels, so that we are basically looking at data summary statistics within a specific area instead of just a point. Correspondingly, we have slightly different summary statistics over a region. Firstly, it will display the area in square kilometer instead of a specific coordinates. And for the land cover type here, it's displaying the primary cover with highest percentage within the region. And also the NDVI value here is the mean level averaged by all the pixels over the region and the time period we selected. So 0.35 is the average NDVI value for this overall region in 2016. And the land surface temperature is 33.35 Celsius for this region in 2016. And similarly, the evap transpiration is 66.9 millimeter per month for this region in 2016. And finally, the tree canopy cover for this region is 13.53. And we are also going to talk about time series charts of regional average and ignore the scatter plot for now. So the NDVI time series for region is mostly similar with the point selection, and the only difference here is each point on the chart is not directly extracted from satellite image. Instead, it's already calculated as a regional average. And so we can say that this temporal variation about time series year annual change is a regional overall average level arranged in a time order. Similarly, the land surface temperature and evap transpiration are following the same logic. So finally, we're going to talk about how to download data. For example, if we want to export data from a specific time series chart, we can just click the gray arrow on top right, and it will pop up a window including several downloading options. We can just click the download CSV button, and it will automatically start downloading a CSV file, including all the exact value for the indicator we're interested in. Here is evap transpiration, and it's already ordered already arranged in a time order, so that we can export it, reformat, and visualize it in a CSV, Excel, or other platforms. Now we are going to talk about our guided example.
Yep.
Can I just ask, you think for the land use, category, land cover category? Is there like a legend somewhere in one of the boxes where like you could see what each color means? Because like if you're just looking at a colored map, like, oh, what this one?
Yeah, on this app right now, no, it's just that range. And then you have to actually click on the point or draw an area. Yeah.
Okay, and
Yeah.
also, I'm assuming for polygons, when you draw a polygon, the primary land use category could be less than 50% of it. It would just be like 40% would be the largest percent. So it would just say like, oh, 40% of it's built, but all the other ones are like less.
Yes.
40.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I just think that would be an initial point of confusion for students. Why does it say primary is less than 50?
Okay. Yeah. No. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is kind of like what we do a lot in like teaching of college students. You just like throw a bunch of stuff at them and then you kind of go back over it a little bit more slowly. So that's so that's what we're gonna do now with a specific example. Here, I've got to get over here. So this is a guided example, meaning we're going to go through the same sort of stuff that Zhuohan just talked through. We're going to use all those functions and click on things, and then talk about how we interpret this. So we're going to start this with a question, which is how does land surface temperature, plant greenness, and landscape water use look at a school versus a neighboring canyon? We'll just go to a local high school, Kearney High School. There's the school, and then very close to it is a big canyon. So we can kind of explore those features in our map. Also, we're looking for 2 points in time. We selected 2 points in space. Now we'll pick 2 points in time. 2016 happens to be a pretty significant drought year in the San Diego region. This is just the US Drought Monitor saying that all of San Diego was in some state of drought in 2016, whereas it was not in the year 2020. Okay, so we can search here for Kearney High School. You can type it in just like you would in Google Maps. It'll take you to Kearney High School. That's what's happening right here. But we can't really see what's going on. We're in kind of this base map, which is a terrain map. It shows the streets, but we don't really know what's going on. That's where this toggle base map button is helpful. We can toggle to a satellite map, like when you're looking in Google Maps and you want to look for a satellite. So if you toggle to the satellite map, things are a little bit more clear, but you can tell the resolution. These are these 30 meter by 30 meter pixels. This is an overhead view of the Kearney High School, and you can kind of see how it gets a little bit pixelated over the finer features of that school. You can click the plus minus buttons on the upper left-hand side to zoom in and out. So that's what has happened here. We zoomed out, so we're seeing the larger region surrounding Kearney High School, including that canyon that's nearby. Okay, we're bringing up the land cover classification layer that is over the Kearney High School area. So what you're seeing is the one that's labeled built up is the school. It's like the campus, the buildings and walkways and stuff. The grass is a field. I think it's a baseball field. And then the trees, that's the canyon. So you can see that this classification is coarse to some extent. It's not even picking up one of the fields in the school, one of the baseball fields, because presumably it's brown during the period of time that we have it here. But these are just simple classifications of the land cover type, and they can be useful when you are trying to select different types of land cover to just sort of pick and choose. Although again, like was pointed out, this land use classification legend isn't very informative in this case because it's just a value range, whereas you would have to click on them to find out. That's where we're at. This is, I wonder if I can. This is the slider, which shows going back, just comparing 2 different sides of the map here. What we're looking at is the same year on both sides. We clicked 2016 on one side, the summer, 2016 on the other side, that's the summer. And you can see one layer, one side is land surface temperature, the other side is evapotranspiration. So you're using the slider to just compare these different data layers for the same time period on both sides of the map. Go. Similarly, this is the same year, 2016, on both sides, but in this case, we have land surface temperature and AT on sides, and on the other one, we have NDVI and LST. This is just to show that, if you wanted to look at one time period, but compare two different layers, that's why you can use the slider to go back and forth. This is 2020, so previous was 2016. This is 2020, which is not the drought year. The last one was the drought year. Same layers, but you can kind of see there's a little bit of a difference here. You can pick one panel to look at, and then when we switch it, you can see things change slightly, although it's not totally clear. These are the same summers, but over different years. So these are the sort of the types of comparisons you can start to do. Another way you can look at this is instead of picking one time period, different layers, you can pick two time periods, the same layer. So this is what this video is showing. So here we've got 2016 on the left and 2020 on the right, and we've got the same layer on both sides. So any changes that you're seeing are actually reflective of the time period, not the data layer. Yeah, there we go. This is just the still images of this. So again, on the left, 2016, that's the drought year. On the right is 2020. That label on the top is wrong. That is no drought year because that's 2020 on the right. But again, same data layer, NDVI, and you can see that down in these panels on the bottom, just different years. Yeah. And I'm just kind of picking out some places that you might want to keep your eyes on. I'm going to flip through different layers. Again, we've got the canyon, we've got the school fields. Like I think that they are baseball fields, school buildings and walkways. And then the same thing on this side. Again, this one's 2016. This one is not 2016. This is 2020. Drought year, no drought year. So here we've got plant greenness. This is land surface temperature. It's a little bit hard to see, but you can tell pretty clearly the canyons are cooler than the non-canyon. The fields, even though they have grass, it's not entirely clear if they are any more or less cooler, but across the different time periods looks somewhat similar. Evapotranspiration, that one you can kind of see some more significant differences in the 2020, the no drought year versus the drought year in terms of the amount of water, say, that's coming out of the canyon. Same vegetation, but there's not a drought in this year. So there's some more evapotranspiration going on. Now what I'm gonna go through, I'm gonna pause really quick, is those things that Zhuohan skipped over. There were the scatter plots. And that's because those are a little bit of a complicated beast. Those are probably the closest thing that this map has capability for that resembles the types of stuff we're looking at in our research. But it is helpful for sort of doing the types of comparisons that I did. I think to some extent, just playing with the map and the way I just did might be sufficient, right? For many students and grade levels. And then there's kind of additional levels of information you can get from these maps, including charts, figures, downloading data that might be better for, say, high school students.
Maps, say, if you had like dramatic differences, I'm just imagining between like 1 year where there's like the maximum value was something like 100 and the next year it was 150, would the axes on both maps be the same? or will they adjust based on?
So yeah, the axes will adjust, and I'll show some charts later, and you can see what happens. In this case, I'm going to go through one example. It's a common location example, which means we're selecting one location, one point on one side of the map, generating data for that, and then looking at different time periods again, same time periods I've been using. So for example, clicked a point in the canyon. It has popped up some panels, right? Those pop-up panels are just showing statistical summaries and charts for those 3 layers, greenness, LST, and evapotranspiration. Regardless of the data layers that are shown on the map right now, recall I'm showing this land cover classification, right? I've clicked on a point, these panels popped up. The data that's shown on those panels is just what it's plant greenness, NDVI, LST, and ET, no matter what's shown on the map at that moment. So these charts are sort of a separate thing. So what you see here, average data layer values at that point over the time period, data layer values for every available observation within the time period you selected at the point for the period you selected on the left. So these are just all the available observations you have over the 2016 summer period for plant greenness in the form of NDVI. Same kinds of information are shown on this right panel at this same point, but over this alternative time period. These time series charts, again, they are the available data. Oh, I thought you were asking a question. And again, these are going to show you, you're going to get 3 charts for every point that you select. You're going to get NDVI, which is the one you see now. If you scroll down, you're going to get land surface temperature and evapotranspiration at the same time points. And then again, same information over here. If you scroll down, you'll also see LST and ET. And again, it's also for this point, but just over a different time period. These scatter plots are the thing we've been avoiding up until now. Essentially, what they are, they allow us to compare average data values at this one selected point for the different time periods. And that's what we're calling this common location. And what you get then is this common location plot on the side that generates in this information panel. The charts and information you've seen before come in these pop-up panels on the map. This one will generate on the side in the information panel, and it can be a little bit tricky to interpret. I will go through this one. What this is telling me is for this point, for this point over this time period, on average during the summer of 2016, we had an NDVI in that canyon of about 0.7. That's pretty high. It's a lot of trees. And a land surface temperature of on average of 40 degrees Celsius. On average during the summer of 2016, similarly, same NDVI and an ET of about 160 millimeters per month. Similarly, in the summer of 2020, we have an NDVI that's slightly higher, almost 0.8, and a land surface temperature that's almost identical. So the kind of climate variation between these years doesn't matter much in this instance. And again, so similar value, just slightly higher NDVI. And so this is an example of how these axes will change. So you see over here, it's between 0.4 and 0.8. When you pop out, I clicked on this little arrow here, it pops out the chart that you can download the data for. This has narrowed the range to what we're seeing for the actual points. So that's why those charts look different. These charts are purely a way through which you can kind of do comparisons. So right now, the point here is that I'm doing a comparison of 2 time periods at one point, and it's giving me a summary of this. This may or may not be useful to probably a wide variety of students, but it is sort of as close as it gets to the kind of stuff that we're looking at in our group. Similarly, we can do 2 points, right? So if you click 2 points, what you're going to get are average data values at 2 selected points across different time periods on the left and right. So I've got 2020 here, summer 2016 here, canyon point, school point. So this time I'm collecting a point in the middle of the school. Here, what will happen is these scatter plots will show two charts, a left location and a right location. And we can go through and interpret these if we want. The left location is the same one as before. It's that canyon one. And then the right location is giving us some different information at the school. So here you're seeing in general a lot lower NDVI because it's buildings and pavement. The temperature is a little bit warmer, 46 degrees Celsius in that summer of 2016. We've got, again, same NDVI, really low. The ET is significantly less because there's no plants there. And again, similarly in 2020, still really low NDVI, not green, and then pretty warm. And again, same NDVI, still pretty low in terms of the amount of evapotranspiration that's happening over this built up area because there are no plants. The last one, this is a common time plot. This is a case where you have 2 points and you want to look at them over the same time. And for this particular example, this is probably the only one that is sort of interesting. So in this case, what we have is we are looking at, again, 2 different points, 2 different time periods. And what we see in the scatter plot is on average during the summer of 2020, NDVI, so these are both now 2020, sorry, same time periods. On average, during the summer of 2020, we had an NDVI here that was logging as 0.5, a land surface temperature of 35 degrees Celsius, and an ET of 160 millimeters per month. That is the canyon point, right? That you can tell by the NDVI because it's 0.5. Alternately, at the school, we have a really low NDVI, a much higher land surface temperature, and then also the 65 millimeters per month, which is relatively low. So this is just a tool to do these kinds of comparisons. And again, this is just the same as before, except we've got the same time periods, 2 different locations. And what that means is that this point is generating these charts on the left for the 2020 summer, and then this point is generating the charts on the right for the 2020 summer as well. Okay, this is the link to the app. You can play with it. We can take questions. You guys can choose a location, and we can go to it live right now. I know we don't have, we're out of time, but I don't know what to do.
Definitely. So being collaborative, what I recommend is that we take some time to explore it and think about our specific context for use with students. So actually, I don't have a microphone, so I don't think anything I said.
For thinking about examples, thinking about an example that is of use for students, I can go. We can go to the app here, and I can do it live now. Lainey, are there any questions that are okay? Does anyone in the room have a location they would like to?
Did you actually do this with Kearney students?
Pardon?
Did you do this with Kearney students?
No.
Because I think my school's probably on that map, and I think
Oh, yeah.
it's cool for the Kearney kids to help my kids.
Oh,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Doesn't yeah, we're right there.
Oh, okay.
We do a lot with Kearney, so.
Oh, yeah.
Cool if we did.
Yeah, no, we picked that. Alec had just mentioned that school, so we just did that example, and that it conveniently had a very thick canyon nearby. So, but yeah, here we can. So the one thing and the reason why we did this presentation the way we did it, this app is very slow. You will click something and it will do nothing, and I urge you to also do nothing until something appears. Yeah, take a deep breath. Let me see here. So only 2 of the data sets are global. So the land surface temperature in NDVI is global because the satellite is taking global imagery. The evapotranspiration is a product that's generated for the United States only. and specifically is only available over the time period we're looking at over like the Western United States. Yeah.
Also, then PSS.
Yeah.
But we clip it into California because it's
Slow.
taking long time to go into so I just pick the.
And since the virtual participants are gonna be following those steps, we could get those slides.
Yeah.
If you could share that with me, that'd be awesome, or share it
Oh.
with Lainey. I don't know if we can
These
put it in
are.
the chat, because they may wanna get back to some of the slides.
Oh yeah, here. I think that this is, yeah, anyone with the link. Yeah. Okay, hold on. Yeah. Okay. Okay, hopefully that's accessible. Lainey, do you want to try clicking it and seeing if it... Oh, it does? Okay. Okay, so, but here's the app. Do you guys want to go somewhere? We could go, I mean, we can pick a spot. I know that like, I was enjoying looking at that golf course up on the top of Mount Soledad. Yeah. So here's, I just navigated to this golf course. Whoops. So do you see? Did it load? Like, does it roughly look like this? Okay. So these are, I just navigated to this country club drive in La Jolla because it's a golf course. And you can zoom in, right? And then you see like it's loading very, very slowly. And this is the reason for this is this platform that we're using is a platform that is both a database that Google makes available. It's a database of geospatial data. And also you can write apps like this on it to display those data. But you know, the bandwidth for that is shared by, it's a public application. So, you know, we are not dedicated users of this, and therefore it is slow. So we can do like 2016. I'll do the same years. This is 2020, or we could do a different year. Or we could do 2015, 2021. This is NDVI in the summer. Oops. And I'm going to switch this side to LST. Okay, and then we're going to wait. Oh, and I'm on Wi-Fi.
What software do you normally use?
To do analysis of the data. Oh, so I use R. People in my group use Python and MATLAB and R. So just, you know, scientific programming languages that let you interact with the data. But I use the Google Earth Engine platform, the same one that, you know, Zhuohan wrote most of this app in. I use that to download data for analysis. I don't use this app. Like the app is sort of on top of the data, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Is anyone using it for you?
Yeah, I think, yeah, people in my group and I use ArcGIS for some things. I think it gets tricky doing spatial data analysis and that with time series data, and that's when it gets less useful. But for making maps, it's still a really powerful tool. And people that have used ArcGIS for a long time, it's still a tool of choice often. Let me see if this will let me. Going to summer. Going to summer. And I'm going to click to land surface temperature. And then I'm going to zoom out. So you can see like the terrain map is helpful. Sometimes you can kind of see elevation and you can see major geographic features. But if you want to kind of get super detailed in terms of what you can see, this toggle the base map is helpful because then we can see actual buildings. So there's the golf course. I'm gonna let it load. There we go. Okay, and so here, you know, like it's a little bit hard to see, but you can see the temperature difference primarily in these kind of urban area over here compared to some of the vegetated areas. So I'm going to move the slider. So in these areas that have less vegetation over here, the temperatures are a bit warmer. The land surface temperatures in these areas that have a lot of vegetation, they tend to be a little bit cooler. Can look at the evapotranspiration too. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. So here again, we've got that golf course. You can see for the summer, there's a little bit more water coming off of this golf course. It's irrigated, as well as from the canyons and the hillside over here. So obviously, you know, areas with plants are always going to look like they have higher evapotranspiration because, again, it's not only evaporating from the ground, the leaves are breathing out water. And then let's go ahead and click a point. I'm going to go click, zoom in a little bit and click a point in there and see what happens. It might be slow. This will happen. You can either just do nothing or you can click wait and it'll just generate. There we go. There are times of day where this works better, works worse, depending. I think it's just Google's bandwidth. Like if there are more people, like in the mornings, it seems to work better than like in the evenings. I'm not really sure why, at least for me. Okay. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's probably an issue with this as well. Okay. So I clicked, this is like, I think a tree area, although Earth Engine is telling me it's built up. But it has an NDVI 0.5. That's pretty high. 32. This is similar to the other areas, but you'll see here. So in this chart, I'm going to pop out this chart. There's no data here. It's probably because there were clouds or the data was not available for some other reason. This is NDVI time series. And you can see if you click on it, it'll give you the exact value. So you wouldn't even have to download the data necessarily if you just want specific values on certain days. But it is quite useful. What I just did is I just downloaded a CSV. So I could open that in Excel and I would have all of the points here of the dates and the NDVI. So that's one. Okay, and then remember, because I just clicked on one point here, so this is also showing me the data for that same point. It's just this one's over 2020, and you can see or 2021, we only have 1 point in 2021 over the summer period. I'm going to go ahead and click on another point. Or maybe I'll even try and draw a polygon. So I just clicked on draw a polygon. And I'm going to click a point here, there, 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 and there. And then I'm just going to wait. And so what this is going to do is, instead of giving me information at a specific point, it's going to summarize the information from all the pixels that are in this polygon that I just drew. And again, I can either wait without clicking wait, or wait and click wait. Either one. There it goes. And it's generating my scatter plots over here. Again, these ones, the scatter plots, you kind of just have to stare at for a long time to interpret, or go through the exercise I went through where you take a single point, draw the lines, see what it means, move on to the next point, and then interpret at the end. So here, I believe it's still generating my chart. I think. Oh, or there's only one. It's already done. So it's saying that this is 100% built up, or this was classified as built up. Lower NDVI in this case, slightly higher temperature, much lower ET. It's saying 20% of, if you looked up, 20% of the area would be covered by leaves. And then, we have, it looks like we have 3 values of evapotranspiration at that point, but we only are getting 1 observation of NDVI and LST. NDVI and LST, if you're missing data, they're always going to be the same. They're from the same satellite. And that's why they will look similar. And then if we want to change the data layer that we're looking at here, this is what Zhuohan pointed out, is we're actually going to go and remove the year. And then I'm going to reselect the year. I'm going to keep it on the summer, but in this case, I'm actually going to change it to this tree canopy cover. You can kind of see the relationship between tree canopy cover and greenness. So, areas with higher tree canopy cover are going to have higher NDVI. That makes sense. But we don't get a time series of the tree canopy cover. The only ones we get charts of are NDVI, LST, and ET. Tree canopy cover and the land classification, those are annual. So we just summarize them over the whole time period that we have. Let's see what other. I'm clicking full year now. I'm going to see if it'll let me. I'm going to wait. And I'm going to go back to ET. It won't regenerate, will it? Yeah. Yeah. So here, I'm going to clear this. We're going to reset the map now so that we can select new locations or data layers. So I just click reset map and see my points are gone, my charts are gone, and now I can start over. Any requests? So what happened is it's down here. Yep. So it'll go away once you reset, but you have to do it on both sides, I believe. Yeah. And then, yeah, this was on this side, there's a, brief summary. This is this toggle base map one that we showed. These are really simple summaries or summary instructions, but yeah, if you click, we've got more detailed instructions for folks to look over. So hopefully those are helpful. Down here at the bottom, we have a feedback link that was also in the slides. So if you're using this and you have questions or suggestions about functionality, we're happy to hear from you. And then I'm going to keep scrolling down. So about this map, these are all the data. Zhuohan talked about this before, but we actually have links to for those that are interested in details about the actual data set. So I mentioned land surface temperature and NDVI are from the same satellite data set. The link to information about that is here. So this is a Landsat 8. This will take you to a page that will probably not make a ton of sense. But this is from the data catalog where we got these data. There is capacity to look at a description of the data set. Again, this is pretty dense, but it's there for folks that are interested in. So these are all the data sets. And then this is just a quick summary of the information that gets popped up once you click on points. So again, this is as short as we can make it, but if you want more information, go ahead and go to the click here button, which will take you to that instructions document. Going to